This is The Brain Lab, a podcast about brain health, cognitive performance, and skills like speed reading that strengthen how we process information. And in each episode, we'll translate neuroscience into practical insights that you can use. Welcome to the Infinite Mind podcast. I'm Brian. I'm the COO of Infinite Mind. I'm joined today by Jeffrey Flam. He's our founder. And we're also joined today by David Robinson. David Robinson is an acquaintance of ours over a long period of time. Jeff and Dave have known each other for a long time. I've had the pleasure of meeting you several times, and your story's amazing. So we wanted to get you in and capture just a little bit of that, and also get a little bit of input on what you're working on and where you see the future of all these things going.
Great.
So yeah, welcome to the podcast. Can I just start by asking a little bit of your professional background? Can you tell us a little bit about where you came from and how you got to where you are now?
Sure. Yeah, it's been a road. Today I would consider myself a professional problem solver, and sort of started out on that path trying to fix problems in medical imaging. But I've been lucky in that I get to work in a whole bunch of different places. And for whatever reason, a lot of really talented people ask me to help them solve problems. So as an entrepreneur, that's what I've done. All my businesses have come from trying to solve a specific, generally fairly technical problem.
Amazing. And you've done this multiple times now. I mean, you've had several successful companies over the years.
Yeah, I've had 7 exits. I've had 2 failures, and I have several in process right now. So
successes or failures in progress.
Well, my hope is these are my biggest successes. I actually.
Well, it's exciting as we talk about it, what you've got going. So we want to hear about it for the end of the program. So if you're tuned in, you got to stay to the end to hear where things are going.
Can do that.
So I guess I'm going to fast forward then just a little bit to see if you can tell us a little bit of the history that led you to Infinite Mind.
Sure. So I met Jeff at a social group that we were both involved in called the Brilliant Minds Group. Obviously a mistake. They let both of us in. So, so we were a part of this group, and I had a stroke, a subarachnoid hemorrhage. It's kind of stroke where you get a brain bleed at the base of your skull into the arachnoid layer that surrounds your head. And basically what it does is it rains blood into your brain, and your brain doesn't like blood, so you have seizures. And ultimately, most people that have that, I think 90% of people that have that kind of a hemorrhage die. I got really lucky in that.
Well, where did it happen? Tell us about.
Oh boy! Okay.
Tell us about the events of how it happened. I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, actually, really scary. I was at the gym, and my wife had finished her workout and gone off to work. And so I went in to finish my last set, and I sat at the end of the bench, and it felt like I'd been hit in the head with a sledgehammer. And I mean, literally, like I didn't really get hit by anything, but I fell off the bench onto my knees, sort of crawled and half walked into the bathroom, where I threw up, shit myself, bleeding from my nose and my ears, just really bad. So any normal person, any person who was not me, would have called an ambulance and gone to the hospital. But I got in the shower and went to work because I had a woman driving down from Logan that I didn't want to disappoint by not showing up. So I walked in to meet with her, and she looked at me. Cindy Mon, if she makes the podcast, she saved my life. I walked in to meet with her, and she looked at me and she said, "David, you're having a stroke. You can go to the hospital in an ambulance or with me, but those are your only 2 choices." And of course, I'm like, "No, I'm not." I went to the bathroom and washed my face and went back to work, and all my things are gone. My assistant is gone. And Cindy is standing there. She says, "Ambulance or my car? Choose now." So she took me to the hospital, and how silly I was. I said I wanted to go to St. Mark's because I had dinner. It was my night to cook dinner, and I could just picture my wife saying, "It was your night for dinner."
Oh, no.
How stupid is that? So when I get to the hospital, the way to get through the ER, anybody who wants to know, just tell them you're having a stroke and you're in. They put me in an MRI. I came out, and I remember the doctor looking down at me saying, "We can't treat you here. Do you want to go to IHC or the university?" And the next thing I know, I woke up at the university 2 days later.
2 days later. But you remember all the onset of this sequence of events.
Yeah.
That's remarkable.
Yeah.
Wow. So what was kind of the net outcome of the stroke? I mean, how did it affect you?
So the worst thing about a stroke is that you look physically okay because your injury happened inside your body where no one can see it. I was left with my body functioning quite well. I didn't have any paralysis or lasting issues around my physical being, but I couldn't read. And I couldn't I couldn't really drive very well. It was actually really funny when I checked out. I said, "Can I drive a car?" And they said, "Probably." And I said, "Should I fly an airplane?" And they said, "Yeah, probably not." And I said, "How about a motorcycle?" And they said, "All those other people in the hospital with you, they all came off motorcycles. Don't ride a motorcycle." So give you a sense of kind of where you were. But the biggest problem I had actually is when I got out of the hospital, it was immediately prior to COVID. So I got out of the hospital and it was like, what do I do? And so I got out of the hospital in October. By December, I was trying to go back to work and not succeeding. And I went to a Brilliant Minds event, if you remember that Christmas party. And for whatever reason, there were a whole bunch of single women at this party. And like the mama bears, they all surrounded my wife and I. So I'm sitting at a table with my wife and I think 8 other women and myself. And Sandra, the woman who runs the organization, said, "Everybody's going to tell us what they've got, but Dave had something big happen." And I swear to you, these women like moved their chairs physically around me. Like, Dave doesn't have to go if he doesn't want to. But that's how you found out that I'd had a stroke. And so Jeff approached me and said, "I've got this product you really ought to think about." And I'd looked at it before to try to help figure out how to market the product and sell the product. And so I started using it. And it was, I'm not even sure how to describe what it's like to go from being a functional thinking person to not being able to read, not recognizing people, not knowing the things that you knew, like how spreadsheets work and just weird things.
Things you take for granted right now. I mean, it's
totally
just life,
for
right?
granted.
So did it erase your long-term memory, short-term memory, both?
Both for a period of time. So for about 2 years, every time I met with somebody, I'd look their picture up on LinkedIn so that I'd make sure I know who they were. So that's the story of how that recovery happens. But with Infinite Mind, I learned to read again. My reading it took about 3 months of daily work, like an hour a day. I was really, really dedicated because I really wanted it back. And what I found that was remarkable is my reading comprehension came back before my reading speed did. But when my speed came back, I read with better comprehension faster than I ever have before, which is interesting because most of the reading I do is quite technical in nature. Yeah. And so I could like literally see my comprehension improving as I went through the product. So
you said it took 3 months. Did it take 3 months to start seeing results, or?
No, I saw results from week 1. Wow. I mean, I immediately saw results in the way that I was able to do it. And it's hard because, you used to be able to read and then you can't.
Right.
And so starting to read again felt like learning a brand new skill. But it came on really fast. Like I knew how to read. My eyes just didn't know how to get it into my brain the right way.
Wow.
We've had people who have had concussions playing football or sports, and they go through a period of recovery, right, from a TBI. And they've used and seen remarkable things, but we hadn't had anybody that had a stroke before that's talked to us about it. So it was interesting to see your progress using it and what a difference it made. How long was it before you started using it? Were you seeing any improvements during that period?
I had my stroke in September, late September. I got out of the hospital on October 5th. I started using Infinite Mind in January, right after our Christmas party. I did not see any measurable improvement in my life for more than a year. And it wasn't just because Infinite Mind. I mean, I had a lot of disabilities to deal with. Now, I would note, I also, you, in your generosity, gave this to another young man I'm mentoring named Jesse Taylor. Jesse had a TBI hit his head on a curb, and it ruined his life. And so that's part of where I started to see how we could roll this out to a community, because I found it by sheer luck. And I would imagine a lot of the people that are using Infinite Mind hear it on the podcast. You get a referral from a friend, but there isn't this wide world. This should be the kind of thing where anybody who deals with this should try this. There's no downside. Right? There's no side effects.
Well, especially because it's free now. The basic version's free in the App Store under Infinite Mind Brain Exercises. So that's why anyone can try it, right? I had the friends that I've had that have had concussions, and they've gone down to a clinic here in Utah and paid thousands a month to do eye exercises. and they have them do eye and sound exercises. And when they explain it, they go, I went under your program. It's almost the same as what I'm paying thousands of dollars to do at a clinic. And I go, yeah, and it's free. So
you take, I think that's absolutely right. And you take that to the next step. What about sports? What are they doing with vision in sports? They've got all these boards, right? How do you catch a ball? You got to put your hands all over. Infinite Mind can solve all those problems. So from my standpoint, what Jesse went in and where I got involved with him was in stroke camp. So he was so disabled that he had to go retrain how to live. How do you get in a car? How do you get out of a car? How do you feed yourself?
He was that bad.
He was that bad.
Wow.
He's learned to read with Infinite Mind now.
Wow.
He's reading again. He's actually moved into another living facility. He's actually looking for a job now. So it's fundamentally changed his life as well.
That's great.
But stroke camps are those places where people go when they have serious disabilities coming out of the hospital. And I think a product like Infinite Mind could do wonders for them. And that's a place you can roll it out and actually get paid for it.
Yeah. We'd love people that have had any kind of a TBI to try it and let us know back. Has it helped you? And, the more results we get that are favorable, then the more chance there are that some university will take it on or some medical group and do some more scientific research with it.
I love products like Infinite Mind. So anything you can do through the eyes, it's like a gateway to the brain. So we're going to see products coming on in the next few years to treat diseases that are brain diseases like Parkinson's with light therapy, for example, because you can stimulate the brain differently. And I think Infinite Mind fits into that pantheon of treatments where you're trying to treat the brain and get the brain to act in different ways. Yeah. So the areas that I see that could be really interesting is myopia. Myopia is a huge problem in the world, and Asia, Singapore, worse than anywhere else in the world. That's only getting worse.
And why is that, do you think?
Because, so first of all, Asian cultures are more about studying, and so their kids spend a lot more time on the computer or in books, and just using your vision can degrade your vision over time.
Yeah.
So
straining.
Just really quickly for the lay people among us, can you give a brief explanation of myopia so we know kind of what we're talking about?
Nearsighted, farsightedness. So the concomitant therapy. So most of the time in Western medicine, we try to treat things with drugs. So let's take an example, Parkinson's disease. We use a drug commonly called levodopa.
Yeah.
It's not very effective. You get maybe a 7-8% increase in your symptoms, but you have hallucinations and all kinds of side effects that are significantly problematic. And the drug degrades over time.
Right. My father was on it for years.
So when he
died of Parkinson's.
So it turns out when you combine that with specific frequencies of light therapy, that the levodopa becomes much more effective. And so there's a combination therapy that takes it from 7 or 8% to 18 or 19%.
Wow.
As you well know, Jeff, there are no Parkinson's drugs that will give you an 18 or 19% improvement.
No.
So
you're hoping to stabilize it somewhat.
So that's the sort of concomitant therapy. Yeah. When we're doing myopia, right, we're giving eye drops as part of a myopia, try to elongate the eye. That concomitant therapy with retraining the eye is where you would see clinical differences in myopia treatment.
Well, an interesting thing that I've never shared with you, so I'll share with everybody now, but Dr. Kawamoto, the one thing he said when I met him in Japan back in 1998, he said the students that are on this year after year, none of them that are nearsighted will wear glasses after a year on it. Farsighted doesn't change,
right?
Which was interesting. Didn't change farsightedness, but nearsightedness, they don't wear glasses anymore, so it improved vision. He said you need to put that as a disclaimer that it will improve vision if you're nearsighted. So if your lenses are changing, that's why. If your vision is changing, be aware it probably will if you're nearsighted. And so we used to have that in as a kind of a warning, as it's a great thing, but you have to kind of tell them what's going on. So they're expecting it. And so it's right down the alley of what you're talking about. So I think when you talk about myopia, it probably could make a difference because he saw that in Japan.
I'm sure he would. I'm sure he would. But the idea that I would put out there is let's find some people that are creating drugs to treat myopia. So there's one right now at the University of Utah called Ivina. They're a pretty well-funded startup. They've done an initial license of one of their products to Bausch & Lomb. So they have some money, but they're doing studies right now on a drug to treat myopia. And so how wonderful would it be if we could get them as a subset of their study to treat some number of their patients using Infinite Mind as well, and look at the differences between a drug only and a combinant therapy treatment approach.
I'm sure there's multiple things that always will help with anything. It's not one single thing. You know, usually you find 2 or 3 things and everybody reacts a little differently. And so you have to try and see what things work for you, right? That's why I've loved this ring of mine that kind of tells me on my sleep, I try different things and see what works, because it's measurable. If we have things that are measurable, then people can know whether it'll help them or not, or if it is.
I think that's true. And I think one of the things about Infinite Mind is that the progress is measurable. It's hard to measure progress with drug treatment, and especially in TBI. So TBI progress is like you don't slip back, right? You're not falling back into where you were. And being able to demonstrate and codify that progress in a way that's actually demonstrable is really difficult.
Right. What's interesting, we haven't done major studies on this with older people, but we've recreated the product to work primarily for baby boomers as they get older, to kind of erase brain fog, help mitigate brain fog, cognitive decline, because it's just like going to the gym. If we're not going to the gym, our muscles atrophy real quickly. And you notice it as we get older. You lose your muscle mass. You don't have the same levels of T cells. And so anyway, this is the same with the brain. If you're not doing things with the brain, reading, different kinds of puzzles, thinking, Infinite Mind, if you're not doing things like that, the brain will atrophy. And then it becomes, you have more and more of those senior moments. And so our goal, our average user used to be in the 20s, and I would say now it's in the 50s, high 50s maybe.
Yeah, at the moment we're, kind of around the mid-50s.
Mid-50s is our average age now. So it's more and more people that are sensing that are looking for something to help them strengthen the brain. And what was interesting, we had an executive, a CEO of a big drug testing company out of San Francisco, the Bay Area. He came and met with us, and he was talking about they do drugs they're doing some for Alzheimer's right now and Parkinson's. But he said, when I looked at your brain studies, yours affects the brain, and I've not seen anybody else's that affects the whole brain like that, where it'll get both sides firing. He said some of the big ones, the biggest one out there that's a brain training company, supposed to help you. I would say the name, but I don't want to say anything disparaging against anyone. But he said that one had 20% change just in your Broca's area, but it didn't change the whole brain. So he said, this one actually affects both sides of the brain, which is huge. So I think that people need to know it really does work. It's been scientifically shown how much it improves brain function. But I actually did a little study with just 8 of my neighbors, maybe 10 years ago. They were older. I said, I want to see how much this will help you guys, because one of them was getting so they couldn't remember anything. So his wife approached me and said, would your program help him? And I said, I think so. So she and he, and they got 6 other of their friends to go on it and do it for 2 months. And what we did was we tested them on 3 things: their reading speed and comprehension. We did math puzzles, and it was on a matrix. So down vertically and horizontally, we had numbers with squares, and they had to fill all those in. And we timed how long it took them to complete that. And then we gave them 20 words of names of objects to remember. And then we tested on how many they could remember. And what was interesting is 8 weeks later, it was just 8 people, so it's not a huge study. But the remarkable thing is they all improved by 100%. Their reading speed went up, their comprehension, the time to do the math puzzles went in half, and the number of things they could remember doubled. So I go, I know there's something here.
Yeah.
You're an example of it.
I'm a living example of it.
So anyway, we're excited for people my age and older to use it, because I think they'll see a big difference. I see it. Whenever I start getting so I can't remember names, I go, I'm not using it enough, and I get back on it every day. And then within a couple of weeks, I don't notice I'm forgetting names anymore. So it's pretty quickly I notice. I don't have to get on it a long time, and I start noticing it comes back.
It's like exercise.
Yeah,
it's like exercise.
It is like exercise. I wanted to go back to the myopia for a second. So when we talk about Infinite Mind and what it does, we particularly focus a lot in the changes in brain activity, partly and maybe mostly because we've been able to measure it concisely with an fMRI, right, in multiple studies. And so we can concretely say we increase brain activity through our exercises. But myopia is different than that because it's not so much a brain defect as it is a physical defect in the eyes. And so when you talk about Infinite Mind being a combination therapy for myopia treatment, are we talking more about a physical therapy? Because Infinite Mind uses these broad eye movements that exercise essentially the 8 different muscles in the eyes. So is that what we're talking about? Is it more of a physical therapy rather than some of the cognitive changes we talk about in a lot of our other things?
It is. So the only eye drops that they use to treat myopia today are atropines. The same thing that you do, you get an eye test, right? So they're not particularly effective. And what they're trying to do is change the shape of the eye. The company Ivina that I was talking about has a product called, I think it's IV Med 85. And that's just the number of the compound that they're actually using that is a new way to treat myopia. So my question is, if you combined the physical characteristics, I think of eye or Infinite Mind as like a physical therapy for your eyes or for your brain. And when you combine that with the drug therapy, the question is, does that group have a greater success rate than the drug-only group?
Yeah,
that'll be so interesting.
I think it would be interesting. And now that you mentioned that, I remember Dr. Kalmuda talking about it, that what nearsightedness is caused by the shape of the eye and the direction of the cornea and lens and everything. And I don't remember all the terminology he used, but he said what it does is all the eye exercises get the eye back into the right shape. So that's why it helps with nearsightedness. But again, we haven't had major studies done on it. This is just empirical evidence that he had from the people using it in Japan.
So the issue, of course, if you want to do, a clinical study in the classic sense, you could be spending millions of dollars.
Right.
And so most of the time you don't want to do that because you want to have a hypothesis you can test.
Right.
I think there may be a low-cost way to do that. So, for example, Ivina is already doing a clinical study, and they're doing it at Moran with grad students. These are low-cost people. So adding an additional cohort is a matter of getting clinical approval.
Right.
And that's what we ought to be focused on.
That's a good idea.
That could be good for them too, because it substantiates and validates anything that they do, because you'll have that many different segments to look at. So you really can isolate what the impact of it is alone versus what it is with other treatments.
So why don't you tell us what you're doing now? I thought it was really interesting when we first met today and you were updating us on your new AI journey.
Well, that's very kind of you to ask.
And so I'd love you to share with the audience kind of what you're doing and where things are going.
So it actually strangely is related to my recovery and related to IQ, because I tried to work for 5 years. And we all know when you have a job and you've done it for your whole life and all of a sudden it doesn't work, there's something wrong. So about 2 years ago or 3 years ago, working with my partner, I started having just ideas that they seemed very odd to me because they were grounded in a part of science that I previously had not well understood around the AI tools that we have, and specifically around large language models and reconstruction.
Was this kind of inspiration coming to you, do you think?
I think it was inspiration. I think it was driven it's driven primarily by a case study at Samsung in 2023.
Okay.
So a bunch of engineers at Samsung started using ChatGPT, and one of their software people thought, well, I wonder if we can get that data back out, because we wouldn't want to have our proprietary data end up in an AI model somewhere that our competitors could get it out. And he was able to pull all the information out. And so Samsung and a whole bunch of other companies outlawed the use of generative models.
Okay.
So I had the idea that we could create a security layer, what's called in software an abstraction. So if you think about Twilio abstracted the interface to telecommunications, so now you can send a text without having a cell phone. Stripe abstracted the interface with banks, so you don't have to have a banking relationship to process a credit card. So we wanted to abstract the large language model so that it would never see any of your training data. So none of your data, your behavior, your output, your keystrokes, none of that gets consumed.
Well, let me ask this. I don't want to interrupt, but I think it's important for viewers to know as well. I understood if you buy an upgraded model of AI, that's one of the apps that's out there, that all your data is kept proprietary. They can't share it. They can't take it. Tell me, is that true or not?
That's not true.
I think the audience should know that.
That's not true. So if you're using a large language model that's an enterprise large language model, Claude, Anthropic, Copilot, ChatGPT, they are consuming all of your data, all of your behavior, anything you load into it, anything you output, every keystroke, every misspelling. We live in an always on AI training world. They are consuming everything. Robots are coming and they're going to consume everything else. They're going to consume your biometrics, your behavior, the way you speak, the cadence of your language, the language you speak. So the idea was, how could we protect companies' proprietary corporate data from being consumed? And at the time, what we were thinking of is, if you're a company like Sentinel and you have a federal contract to build new nuclear missile silos, no one has commissioned a nuclear missile silo since 1985.
Okay.
These records aren't digital. They're not online. And so
people can't steal them right now.
You can't steal them right now.
But if they go on AI with anything, it can be taken.
It could be taken if you used a traditional model.
So tell us what you're wanting to do to help resolve that problem.
So we created this abstraction layer, and it works really well. It creates a one-way valve so that the large language model or your AI tool can't ever see your data or behavior. What we didn't expect is that it meant that we had to create a different way of doing reasoning outside of the LLM, because we couldn't use the LLM reasoning. Now, I don't want to get overly technical, so I'll wave my hands and we'll pretend that we all understand this. Within a large language model, what they call reasoning or tuning is all about next token reconstruction. It's the statistics of how do I reconstruct a word, a sentence, a paragraph that is meaningful.
Okay.
Outside of an LLM, businesses don't need that. Businesses need business reasoning, right? How do I do a very complicated thing? How do I replace you as a job?
Yeah.
And so that's what we found we could actually do by moving it outside the reasoning. So instead of using a typical neural net approach that's used in large language models, we use what's called frameless state work and Petri nets. And it's a fundamentally different approach to doing reasoning, so you can do much more complicated business reasoning in our product.
Wow. What's your expectation on development time for this?
So we're about 2 years into building a functional prototype that my partner Burke and I had sort of figured out. We have about 3 months of work to do to get it go-to-market ready to test. And then we'll be rolling this out to the market in 2026.
Well, I understand you were mentioning earlier when you went and pitched it to some funding groups that every single one of them wanted to fund you.
So I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. I will tell you, I have pitched more companies. I've raised hundreds of millions of dollars. And I've never, ever, ever had an experience like I've had with this set of products now. And it started with a friend of mine who's a venture guy kept bugging me. You got to come tell me what you're doing. I want to know what you're doing. And I was afraid to tell him. I'd been in stroke land, right? I'd been living in the closet for 5 years and nothing worked. And now all of a sudden everybody's telling me this works. But he's my friend. So I went out and talked to him, and we ended up spending 8 hours with him, and he got it. He got it from the beginning. He's been in AI forever. And so he's the one, his name is Kerry Birch, by the way. He should be famous like you, Jeff. He's the one who gave me the confidence to really step out into the world and take this on in a new way.
Well, it's exciting. So 2026, did you say?
2026, we're launching. So we actually, the product has several different sort of approaches.
Okay.
But
probably layer it out, run it out in.
Yeah. So most of the time when I've developed technology in my past, it's all been about the technology. This time I took a much more holistic and different approach. So you have to have a core technology, but in AI has fundamentally broken all of the rules about software and valuation and how things work. And so the way that we approached the product was to concept it and build a framework for the utility in the background. So if you're not a developer and you looked at our demo, it's kind of like, ho-hum, your mom would not be impressed. But if you showed it to a high-end developer, they would be going, oh my goodness, wow, can I do your user interface kind of thing.
Yeah.
So there's a gap that we had to get through. But after we pitched it to Kerry, we packaged it. And here's the differences. I've not been to a single VC office. They all come to see us.
Wow.
The meetings are not an hour long or an hour and a half. They are 6 or 7 hours.
Wow.
And every meeting has ended with them saying, we want to be a part of this. How can we help?
So where do you see yourself in 5 years with this?
Me as a person?
Yeah, you and
I'm
this
going
product.
to be retired
You're
in 5
going to be retired
years.
and in the Bahamas.
So my job is to build a company that is worthy of the person I really want to run it to come to the company. And I'm actively recruiting people now. So we've started to try to build the company differently as well, around a cult of personality. So my partners in the company, it took a long time to recruit them, but like one of my partners was the 7th employee at Google and has had 5 successful exits, all over $1 billion.
I know him.
Wow.
So just, amazing luck in being able to get the right people to the table.
Well, it's all about product and people, right? You have the right people, the right product, and then you've got to have enough money to get it off the ground. And if one of those is broken, you don't have the right people or the right product or enough money, never goes anywhere.
And that's the big problem with startups, is we often fund them to death. We expect startups to bootstrap. And I'm so excited for this because it's the first startup I've ever had where I don't have to bootstrap. From day one,
You've got millions to work with?
We are circling a $25 million seed round term sheet and a $50 million pre-money valuation.
Enviable.
Yeah,
that's great.
knock on wood.
Yeah.
So you're starting this for business. This is going out as a corporate enterprise product.
Correct.
Is there going to be a private consumer application to this?
In the future at some point. So my vision for I love that question, by the way, Brian. So my big vision for this is rooted in the writings of a fellow named Jaron Lanier. So Jaron was a futurist that was employed by Microsoft. When the internet came on, it's like, what's going to happen with all this? How is the world going to work? And he postulated that the value of your data as a single individual is 0. But the value of your data as an individual, when aggregated with 1 billion other people, is worth
valuable.
Trillions of dollars.
Yeah, very valuable.
So these companies, the Facebooks and Googles of the world, have created value using our time and our attention without compensating us for it.
Correct.
Now, they would make the case that they compensate by giving us a social media platform or selling stuff to us more effectively. But that's not compensation. So my goal as we move into the always on, always listening, always watching AI world is to create a security layer that allows me as an individual to determine what AI gets to consume and what they don't.
I love that.
So we're starting at the enterprise level with the privacy of corporate data, but our hope and dream is to move into being the VPN for the AI world.
That's exciting.
I like that.
With our new version of Infinite Mind, every day when you go on, it asks you 3 questions. How long did you sleep last night? How would you rank your nutrition today on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being excellent, that you're not eating bad stuff at all. And then the third is how's your overall sense of well-being? Are you happy or sad or in between? So it has you put those things, and we track that as you go along, and it measures it so that you can kind of, as we collect the data after a few months, we'll be able to tell people the times you sleep more and have your nutrition, here's your performance level. When those things are down, or your sense of well-being, if those things are down, your scores are going to be down. Because I don't think people realize the importance of sleep and proper nutrition. And just whether they're happy or depressed, those things affect our longevity and our brain function, right? So that's what we're trying to do, is track that, because I think that data is going to be extremely valuable to show people the interaction with our brain product, as well as their other things, how they're impacted by all of those.
What might be really interesting is Google and Meta, all of these companies have an executive function moonshot kind of thing, which is they're studying what does it take to make organizations and people more effective in those organizations. Maybe we ought to give them this as a tool and suggest they use a subset of their executives to see if they can improve executive function. Because from what you just said, I think they could.
Well, in the future, it's going to be who in the boardroom is reading the most, on top of things, and knows where the company should be going. If you're just there eating lunch and not saying anything, you're worthless, in my opinion. And I've been an executive for a long time. I always promote people who come and add something. They're always putting us at the leading edge. The ones that are just there filling a seat, when times get tough, they're gone. And in the future with AI, I think it's going to be important that we have people that think. I mean, AI can do a lot of things, but we have to be able to take human knowledge, human emotion, understanding emotional intelligence, how we relate to others, and everything's part of sales, right? To get in any company, anything, you've got to have people that know how to sell. So I think all those things are going to be important. So I tell people, you've got to be reading. Mm-hmm. Good executives are reading a lot, and that's why they stay on top of things and they can become visionary leaders. Those that are just in the weeds handling the day-to-day stuff, they find out competition comes and passes them by because they're not watching the horizon, what's happening. Tell people, you want to watch where the wave's coming and get with the wave and ride the wave. Where are things going in the future? If you stand still, the wave hits you, you're gone. Mm-hmm. You got to kind of go with the wave.
The inflection point that I'm thinking about, the wave is going to hit a whole bunch of businesses.
Yeah.
And half the businesses that exist in the world today won't exist 10 years from now.
I agree.
Because they did not become AI native companies.
That's right. They've got to figure out, and Brian can tell you, I started this conversation months ago with our own company. I said, how are we using AI? How can it impact us for good or bad? And what are we doing? So it started, and so I sent him to a seminar to learn AI, how to use it. What are all the apps that are out there? Which ones can do great images? Which ones do great content? So on. Learn all kinds of things. And so now he's able to produce so much of this stuff in just a day that we used to wait months for other people to produce.
Yeah.
So absolutely, those that learn and read and find out what's going on, those are the ones that are going to survive.
AI creates another problem that Infinite Mind solves as well. Too much reading.
Yeah, there is
too much time on your computer. Yeah. That's where myopia is being generated in the world.
And we're looking, I think, at a point in our global society now where you have essentially two options. You can adapt and you can specialize. That's one option. Or you can become obsolete. Mm-hmm. I mean, there really aren't any other options at this point because technology is catching up so fast with whatever else we want to do that you're either the person that's handling the puppet strings or you're the puppet, but you're nowhere in between.
Right. That's when the cost of intelligence gets to zero. That's when the real problem starts. So so here's the business problem all these guys face. They spent about $4 trillion training these models. For OpenAI to become a profitable company, they need to reach $100 billion in recurring revenue.
Really?
Do you know how many companies have ever reached $100 billion in recurring revenue?
5?
None.
None?
Not a single software company.
So how many of these AI companies will survive? Will they end up buying each other and combining them? What do you think is going to happen with so many AI companies?
I don't know, because AI has a huge problem right now, and they've priced themselves like a traditional SaaS company. So if I replace Brian, and I replace Brian with a $200 a month LLM, that makes no sense to me as a business, right? If I replace Brian, I want $300,000 for the tool that I use to replace him, because my tool will work 24/7 and will never call in sick, right? It's like Brian plus,
right?
So that's what has to happen. So here's the first thing that's going to happen is consumers and businesses in particular don't want their data consumed. So the minute a company like Mask comes into the picture and we make switching costs essentially zero, all of those trillion-dollar large language models become obsolete. There's a lot of people trying to solve this problem, but they're doing it with these very complicated solutions that are rooted in trying to help these other businesses survive, right? So we don't build large language models. We need those model companies.
Okay.
But what's going to happen is the open source community is going to take over. So we're way past the days of Linux being the only kind of big open source company. There are a dozen billion-dollar open source software companies now. And so
how do they make their money? Selling data?
No, they'll make money from licensing the software that they've developed in the open teams community. So we build on open source software as well. And the world that I see is less than a year from now, there will be thousands of specialty language models out there, both small and large, because the training costs of models has come down so much. And businesses don't need AGI. Businesses need what I call SGI, specific general intelligence to their business.
Got it.
So I'll give you the example I like to use a lot. If you're a pest control company, you have 27 trucks. Every day, every truck that leaves your facility needs to have a binder with a material safety data sheet for every chemical on that truck and any combination of chemicals. So pest control companies today have an employee that shows up at 6 o'clock in the morning and puts together binders for those 27 trucks. But if you took all of your formulations and you put them into your corporate LLM,
Your
SGI, thank you, you could print that in 5 minutes every day.
Got it.
For every truck. It could change every day. Wouldn't matter. You just put in your call list, has all the things in it, boom, you generate it immediately. That model will be out there. There will be a similar model for veterinary practices or medical practices or financial practices or wealth management.
I see it even in, my son has 3 plumbing companies, and I could see it there where you have robots handpicking everything that they need on a truck to go fix certain things.
Yep.
My son, when he bought the company, it was run by 2 brothers that had had it for years, and everything was done in just an old-fashioned way, the way they've always done it. They would come in the morning, the plumber has to go through and handpick everything. And plumbers are expensive by the hour, right? They're handpicking all the stuff they need for the day on the truck, spending their first hour or hour and a half of the day in the warehouse, going around trying to find parts.
And they're pick packing.
And what he did is printed out what they were doing, and the night before, he has his daughters go over that are 12 and 14.
And pick it all.
They hand pick it all and put it in baskets and put it on the trucks.
Yep.
And so he's paying these kids like $10 an hour instead of paying somebody $150 or $200 an hour to hand pick parts. So I see this even taking a step further, that eventually robotics will be doing a lot of this stuff.
Sure. We will see that. And again, they're going to be always on, always listening, always
and they don't
training.
call in sick.
That's
and I
right.
think the number one problem in so much industries, and you watch McDonald's, for example, how they're having so many things done now online. The orders are taken. They may not even be taken by a real person at that store, but they're doing things so they can replace people. Why? Because they can't find enough people, and young people are very undependable. Every business owner will tell you that. Mm-hmm. For some reason, young people just feel like
they probably did when we were kids too, Jeff.
Maybe that was the same. But they say, if a kid wants to go skiing and we won't let him off, they just quit.
Yeah.
Because they can go find another job tomorrow.
Yep.
Wasn't like that when we were kids. You got a job, you kept it because it was hard to find a job.
Yeah.
So I think things have changed, and labor's short. So in some ways, AI is going to be good. We're going to be able to have enough labor in certain things. So, there's a trade-off.
AI will fundamentally change the entire world that our children live in, but not so much for you and I.
Okay. Other than hopefully it helps us live longer and healthier.
I hope so.
I hope.
Got fingers crossed for that too.
Yeah. Well, this has been a great discussion. It's fun to hear where you're going, what you're doing. And I think everybody's interested in AI, what's coming. And some of the things you got into are pretty technical, so a lot of people probably don't really understand what that means with LLM and all of those things, okay? But the important things to know is you need to stay on top of things. Read what's coming, learn. And when you can read fast, you don't just have to have AI go and sort things for you. You can read books and find out what you're interested in too, and stay on top of things. So I think both are important, but there's just so much to get through and read in a day that everybody needs to learn to be more efficient at it.
And more effective. I would say reading was the most important thing that Infinite Mind gave me back. I'm a lifelong inveterate. I read books and books and books every week, just who I am. And not being able to read was the only thing that really happened to me that felt like a disability. Like, oh shit, what are you going to do now? And so I worked really hard at it.
So what's the difference between a person who can't read and one who doesn't read?
Well, I'll tell you the big difference is readers think. And it's the way you think. So where I was going with that is Infinite Mind. It's a great tool to learn to read. I would point people at that. But Infinite Mind is a better tool to let you learn to think differently. And I think if I could point to my own recovery, I could tell you 5 years ago, I could not work. My brain did not process spreadsheets or technology or the concepts that I typically had worked with my whole life. And now it does it better. And I blame Infinite Mind for that.
So that's where we are. Glad to have David Robinson with us. He's a great guy, great friend. And nothing makes me happier than see somebody's life change because of our program. So I'm grateful you'd come and share your story. And for the rest of you that want to learn more about it, just go onto our website at infinitemind.io or go on to the App Store. It's under Infinite Mind Brain Exercises. It'll be the second one that pops up on the screen. So watch for the light bulb. We're here to increase your wattage personally.
David, before we sign off, where can people go to learn more about you and what you're working on?
Eventually, you'll be able to go to 9606.ai. So 9606 is the genomic code in the National Genomic Register for humans.
Oh, wow.
So I've registered the domain human AI, 9606 AI.
Oh, wow.
Excellent.
Interesting.
That's where we'll launch in early 2026.
Okay, we'll look for it.
But
Thank you.
it won't be available till then.
Until then, you have got to call me if you want to know anything.
All right.
And your number's blocked.
Fair. Thanks again for coming.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for everything, Jeff.
Thanks. Thanks for listening to The Brain Lab. If you're interested in putting today's science into practice, you can explore more at Infinite Mind. Until next time, keep training your brain.